Excellencies, Madame Diop, Special Envoy of the Chairperson of the African Union Commission on Women, Peace and Security, government representatives, colleagues and participants, welcome on behalf of the Nordic Africa Institute and the group of African ambassadors accredited to Sweden and/or the Nordic region to this celebration of the Africa Day, where we will reflect on the women, peace and security from the local to the global. Today's webinar with this incredibly experienced speaker lineup will offer a unique opportunity for systematic learning about the progress made on the women, peace and security agenda, and also on the challenges ahead. We are very grateful and appreciative for the collaboration with the African ambassadors that made this event possible. The Nordic Africa Institute is a Swedish research-led public agency under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and a beneficiary of several Nordic governments. We were established already in 1962, which means that we celebrate our 60th anniversary this year. As a knowledge hub for collaborative research in social sciences, our aim is to provide and support a deeper understanding of contemporary Africa, where the ambition is to bring African perspectives to Nordic policymakers. We want to inspire, but also challenge Nordic thinking on how social transformation actually takes place. Today's event is a way for us to celebrate the 59th Africa Day. As you all know, Africa Day is the annual commemoration of the foundation of the Organization of African Unity in 1963. It is celebrated in various parts and countries on the African continent on the 25th of May, just a few days from now. The Nordic Africa Institute was established just 1 year before the OAU was born. And we are proud of the journey we have taken in accompaniment with the continent's ideas and efforts and energies. Consequently, this event today is also part of our 60th anniversary celebration and links to our ongoing projects on women, peace and security conducted here at the Institute. We are glad, and I'm very proud, that we have both researchers and advisors from those projects here today. So in focus of the discussion we will be listening to is the history of Africa's peace and development, which could not have been written without its women, and it's rooted in a long line of feminist activism in pursuit of independence and freedom. We can see linkages with the African Union Parity Policy, which ensures equal representation of women and men in most elected official positions within the organization, and the commitment to the UN Women, Peace and Security agenda across the continent. Important milestones that will be touched upon during today's discussions. But in spite of recent advances in terms of granting women access to peace talks, more work is needed in order to realize this key objective on the women, peace and security agenda, as women remain more or less excluded from contemporary peace negotiations. This is why this event here today, where knowledge and expertise will be shared between science and policy, is so important. We hope that this webinar will encourage more exchange and cooperation between local and global leaders and organizations within the field of women, peace and security. Let me take this opportunity to especially thank Her Excellency Madame Binta Diop, Special Envoy of the Chairperson of the African Union Commission on Women, Peace and Security, for delivering the keynote remarks at today's event. And last, I would like to thank our partners within the ambassadors group, and especially Ambassador Rosa Lakutula, the Ambassador of Zambia, and the Dean of the African Ambassadors to Sweden for making this possible. Thank you. And now I would like to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Angela Muvumba-Sällström, who will provide an overview of today's program. Angela will also introduce the other speakers and moderate the discussions at the end. So over to you, Angela.
Thank you so much, Therese. I too am very much delighted to be part of this special commemoration of Africa Day, and particularly delighted that we are at the same time honoring and reflecting on the gendered aspects of the continent's struggle for peace and freedom. My role today, as you stated, is quite easy. I will be moderating and trying to weave us back and forth between the various contributions of this really interesting group of women who will be speaking today. I want to start by welcoming the welcomers. Ambassador Sofia Kaltorp, Ambassador for the Government of Sweden on the issue of gender equality and coordinator of the Feminist Foreign Policy, who will be followed by Her Excellency Ambassador Rose Salukutula of Zambia. After which we will hear from the Special Envoy of the Chairperson of the African Union Commission on Women, Peace and Security, Madame Binta Diop. And then we will follow that with a roundtable discussion of 4 researchers and a practitioner who are today sitting in, if I remember, Geneva, Accra, Cape Town, and Kampala. And then we will have some back and forth discussion. So with that, let me welcome Ambassador Kaltorp and just note that she has also been Sweden's ambassador to Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Mauritius. And so thus I know has a strong and beating heart for Africa. Ambassador Kaltorp, please join us and give us a few words before we begin these proceedings.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. It's a great honor for me to be, with all of you, although virtually, at this very special commemoration of the Africa Day. And I'm very much looking forward to hear all the insights and knowledge that you, the Nordic Africa Institute, have gathered as part of this event. As you might know, Sweden is pursuing a feminist foreign policy since 2018. And that means that we put gender equality at the very heart of all our foreign policy, in all our foreign policy work, from trade to development cooperation, but of course, in terms of security policy. And the Women, Peace and Security agenda is in that context a top priority for the Swedish government. It's an issue that we are working on both at global but also at local level in many of the contexts that we will hear about today. So for me to be part of this event and to hear from you out in the field on how on what lessons that we can draw and how we together can advance this work is a great honor. The feminist foreign policy is, as I said, about putting gender equality at the very heart of our foreign policy, and we do that by emphasizing 3 things, or 3 R's as we call it. That is to ensure that women's rights, women's representation, and women's resources are equally taken into consideration, to make sure that women's rights are respected, that women are represented in parliaments, but also in peace processes, and last but not least, make sure that resources are equally shared between women and men, and that women are empowered in terms of economic resources, but also other forms of resources, in order to pursue that very important role that women have in all aspects of societal life. And we have come to realize that those 3 R's, the issue of rights, representation, and resources, are are interconnected and interlinked, and that all the three parts of this agenda needs to be respected and fulfilled in order to make sure that our societies are gender equal, and that women are taking that women's capacity are taken into account fully when we develop our societies. And the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, I think, is a very good illustration of how those three R's are interconnected, and how, for example, women's economic empowerment is key in order to make sure that our societies are more stable and peaceful. So I look very much forward to to listen to all of you, and also possibly to interact with you later on during the discussions. But I will not take more time right now, but pass on the floor to my fellow ambassadorial colleague, and look again very much forward to the discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Kaltorp. I'm very happy that Ambassador Rose Salukatula is from Zambia, in addition to her being the Dean of the African Ambassadors to Sweden. The reason I say this is that when it comes to the WPS agenda, Zambia has actually been playing an important role in WPS since before its independence. And what do I mean by that? The country has been host to refugees before 1964, when it became independent, and has had real firsthand experience with the precarity that women in particular experience in humanitarian crises. And this is a part of the WPS agenda, even though Zambia is a country that has been at peace since independence. But as a refugee haven and home also to IDPs, it's had to increasingly also engage with climate-related events and how those also drive people into crisis and require humanitarian assistance. So with a nod to Zambia, with great respect to Zambia, I would like to just welcome Ambassador Salukatula to give her welcoming remarks.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak to this meeting on behalf of the other African ambassadors that are based in Stockholm. I am glad that Angela has already talked about, I think, the story of Zambia regarding refugees and women. I may not need to talk about it again. But I also want to acknowledge our guest speaker, who is our Special Envoy, Madam Binta, the chairperson of the African Union Commission on Women, Peace and Security. I also acknowledge the presence of Sophia Katro, Ambassador for Gender Equity and coordinator of the Feminist Foreign Policy. Also not forgetting my colleague, the director, Dr. Teresa Magson, the director for the Nordic Africa Institute, fellow ambassadors that are attending this webinar, maybe should I simply say distinguished speakers and participants. I just want to say very few remarks, and I am saying that I think all of us working with our parents, we know that supporting women's roles and viewpoints is very, very critical to building safer communities and more resilient societies. I think from our personal experiences, we've been able to see that. And also, I want to acknowledge the steps that Africa has taken in developing strong, progressive, and articulate policies to support the commitment towards the realization of real transformation to gender equality and women's empowerment. Even if we have made a lot of strides, but it is also good to indicate that we still have a lot of work to do. A lot of work still is required, and that is why this meeting is very, very important today, because it is going to look at the progress that Africa has made through the speakers that are here and the challenges that it still experiences in looking at the issues of women regarding peace and security. So I just want to say that I am grateful that I'm part of this conversation today, and also to be able to say a few remarks on behalf of my colleagues. Without taking much of your time, it is now my honor to turn over to the moderation by our doctor in the name of Angela Muvumba, the senior researcher at the Nordic Africa, to moderate us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Salukatula. I realize that I will be on your screens quite a lot during this webinar, but again, I'm just trying to facilitate and move things forward. I am a bit selfish though. I wanted the opportunity to introduce Madame Binta Diop to everybody. It's my great, great honor to introduce her. Many, many years ago, when I was really starting out my career and working at the African Union, I met a woman who had very kind eyes and was very graceful, but above all, had this really strong, steady voice. And she kept walking around the halls of the African Union through corridors and back and forth. In the cafeteria, you would find her all times of the day talking about gender equality and trying to get folks to support first proposals for, and then draft text for, and then finally the passing of the 2004 Solemn Declaration on Gender Equality in Africa. And I was struck by what a resilient and calm fighter she was. Here was a real revolutionary trying to make change in the halls of power. And the struggle she embodied, I think, is really a struggle that continues today. And I hope that we'll be critical in discussing it. But in this moment, I want us to reflect upon her words, to acknowledge her accomplishments. She is the Special Envoy of the Chairperson of the African Union Commission on Women, Peace and Security. She's also the founder and chair of the board of Femme Afrique Solidarité. She has direct experience in integrating women into peace processes and has played an instrumental role in the gender parity struggle that Therese mentioned at the beginning, and in a number of other normative landmarks. And in 2011, Madame Diop was also declared by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. So now it's our turn to be influenced by her. Welcome, Madame Diop.
Thank you so much, Angela. Thank you. Our moderator, Dr. Angela Muvumba Selstrom, the senior researcher, Nordic Africa Institute, and thank you for giving me the floor. And I always say that it's good to see the young women of Africa becoming more and more influential. So it's not only me, but I see everywhere. But let me recognize Ambassador Sofia Kaltrup, Ambassador for Gender Equality of Sweden, but also my dear sister, Excellency Rose Salukatula, Ambassador of Zambia to Sweden, and Dean of the African Ambassador to Sweden. And our host, Dr. Therese Jamander Magnusson, the director of Nordic Africa Institute, but all African ambassadors who are here present or listening, and our distinguished we say panelists, our sisters here present, and all participants. I will say, all protocol duly observed, and wherever you are, good morning or good afternoon. I think it's afternoon. So let me start by really thanking the Nordic Africa Institute and our dear ambassadors in Sweden for inviting me to celebrate with you the Africa Day, which is our day, all of us, even in Sweden, when you are also commemorating the founding of the African Unity Organization of African Unity, which we call now the African Union. But as I understood now, you celebrate also the birth of the Nordic Africa Institute. So on both, it's not a coincidence. I think it's natural that we come together and congratulate one another in a mutual platform. So thank you for recognizing that. So I think for me, the recognition of the African Day by Nordic Africa Institute and the Nordic in Sweden today, is a testimony of your commitment to the centrality of African continued policy dialogue, as you mentioned, in effort of improving the equality and dignity and well-being of the people of Africa. I think today we are talking about women, but we are talking about the people of the continent. Sweden and the African Union has a long-standing relationship and cooperation in the areas of peace, security, democracy, good governance, sustainable development. But overall, what we share most with the Nordic region is the issue of gender equality and so women's empowerment. And I think Africa have learned a lot from our sister from the Nordic region. So this event is yet another manifestation of that partnership. And I commend the Nordic Africa Institute for dedicating this 59th celebration of the Africa Day to reflect on the agenda of the WPS. And I think this is where today we are focusing on. This translates your pledge to integrate and advocate, as I listening to the director, for full implementation of this agenda in the work of the Institute, but also within Africa as well, within our union, bringing WPS at the front. As His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed always say, the chairperson of our commission, he said women in Africa are driving the peace, security, and stability and development of our continent. And I think without their contribution, I always said strongly, without their contribution, Africa will not recover, or Africa recovery will be half effective. So because we are losing the majority of our population, which are the women, and if we add the youth, I think it's more than half of our population. So the WPS, Women, Peace and Security agenda, as you all know, reflected today, I think 1325 within the United Nations, is born where? In Africa, in the soil of the continent. So we need to recognize that Namibia in 2000 was the chair, and we had the Windhoek Declaration, which is really the backbone, or I would say the mother of WPS. And when Bangladesh was sitting as well at the Security Council, the landmark United Nations Resolution 1325 was adopted. So we need really to say this is reflecting the Africa we want, because I think at that stage, its adoption constituted a turning point in the world lenses on issues affecting women and girls during periods of conflict, recognizing the peculiar impact of conflict on their right to protection, but also stressing their agency in the prevention of conflict and building of peace. I think the impact of conflict on the bodies of the women and the minds of the women, I think that is what motivated the adoption of Resolution 1325, which we know with the 3 pillars: protection, participation, prevention. And we go beyond more and more to say we need even to build the peace building, so it doesn't relapse again. I'm proud to say that this fundamental change in the understanding of the impact and role of women in peace process has a strong roots in Africa, as we all recall. So you could see that women now are not only victims. You know, in the 19s, we just go to the field and see the plight of the women, but also rape as weapon of war. But because of their resilience, and you could see in the conflict zone, really, even if they are victims, they are the ones that are there to reconstruct. So they become the agent of change. And that's why it's important that we use this tool as 1325 to make sure that we continue to protect women, but also they participate meaningfully in bringing peace in our continent. So I think indeed the adoption of 1325 was informed by the harsh impact of conflict on women and girls in the 19th. You know, I remember and recall the genocide in Rwanda. You know, when I visited Rwanda after the genocide, 1 year after, we still see the bodies of women, and sometimes women with children in the back, their child on the back, because they were not buried. You can find the body there in churches, in graves, in everywhere, in hospital where they have been slaughtered. So you will find them there and with their clothes, and you see how much they have been used, their body used and abused, and there have been massive killing of women and girls in the genocide. In the Manu River region, I visited many places. In Forekaria, you find the refugee, the impact, the humanitarian situation, lack of food and lack of health, sanitation for women, but also their children. Because when men are fighting, who are the ones that are resilient and are still there? Are the women. And you found them in those refugee camps. And still, you go to, we talk about Zambia today, you go to Uganda, in many other places, it's still the humanitarian issues, because we have the majority of refugees, but not now, because we have also other countries that are in conflict, but you could see that. The other country that I will also talk about is the DRC. You know, there's where you find boys. I'm not saying just the little girls of 5 years, but the little boys that have been raped in the East Congo, crisis as well. So I think that's why the agency of women mobilized to advocate civil society and many other stakeholders, UN supported by UNAU and others, and address the Security Council and say we need women at the table. We need the voice and we need the agenda of women at the Security Council, but also at the country level. So, Excellency, let me just say, Africa is at the vanguard of the implementation of WPS. I think just to recall some of the resolution, because it's always good to remind ourselves the work that African women have done. I think Angela mentioned some of them, relating to 1325. In 2000, the head of state, through the Constitutive Act of 2002, instituted the gender parity, because I think it's unique. Now we are seeing in many countries, including Rwanda, who have more than 50% of women in their parliament, but at the top of AU, the leadership is 50-50. So I think that gender representation in decision-making processes and structure have also to be saluted, because we see now that it trickled down even in the management, but also down to the staffing. So parity need to be implemented, and women are still standing firm. Civil society like Gender is My Agenda campaign network, many of them are mobilizing to make sure that we apply the parity principle adopted already. In 2003, they adopted also the Maputo Protocol and the Solemn Declaration on Gender Equality in 2004. I think we have progressive continental instruments that demonstrate our commitment, the continent commitment to support Resolution 1325 is embedded in those resolutions. And you could see also the regional economic communities that are the one implementing have also adopted regional action plan. So I think when as Special Envoy, I started this mandate, there was 17 countries that have adopted action plan. But I think right now we have 32 countries. It's 58% of AU member states and 6 regional economic communities. Great achievement, great, I think, compared to many others. But I think what we need is to make sure that we implement. I think when I was also at the beginning of my mandate, and I did an assessment when they appointed me in 2014 with the mandate to amplify women's voice in conflict prevention and peace building process, and advocating for implementation of 1325. What I did first was to assess, the situation not just at the Commission, but also outside the Commission in our member state. It reveals many gaps. And let me highlight a few of those gaps that I found when I started in 2014. I think the first one was that how do we make sure that the women voices and faces, are present, in all decision-making regarding women, peace and security. Women were absent, totally absent. And I think going in solidarity mission, which we did a lot, I think this is one of the models that we continue to apply. There is no way that we can, just let the women themselves in conflict alone. We need to demonstrate our solidarity, listening, but making sure also that themselves, they come strong and their voice being heard. Opening the door to the Peace and Security Council for them, making sure that they, go even to the Security Council to be able to discuss and make the necessary testimony and make the influence that are necessary for decision to be taken regarding their country. We went to Mali, to Somalia, to Central, up to many countries that are in conflict, sitting down with the women, closing door. That's the solidarity. That's the empathy. That's what the women need. But not just that, but action. how do we meet with the leader to say the women need protection? Do we have one-stop center, for example, the one that are now existing in many countries? We advocate for that. So it's not just the law, and we are making sure that the law that protects the women are there. But we make sure that also that, the leaders create the solutions and make sure that they respond to the need of the population and the women. In 2017, I think what we look at in terms of the gaps also is, our, maybe not before 2017, was our peacekeeping. You might recall that one of the report that when I was at AU, just arrived, there was a report on, sexual abuse within our troops, which was done by Human Rights Watch. So it was a gap to say, do we have code of conduct? Do we train our military before we send them to protect the civilian? Now I think we have make sure that the AU have such instrument, but we need to apply them. We need to train, and that's why our centers of excellence that we see in many places, in the Kofi Annan and others, are making sure, we make sure that they train the troops before they are deployed, but not just training, but monitoring their conduct. And if anything happens, is to take them to justice. So, and I think that is some civil society also, like in the DRC are doing. They're having their caravan in the ground, identify those perpetrators, but making sure that we have the justice, even at the local level, to, denunciate those perpetrators, but make sure that there is justice as well. So this is something that we found ourselves when we came as a gap, and we say we need this, and now AU have those instruments. We need to make sure that they are applied everywhere. So we also found that the women at the table as mediators. Many times when I attend peace talks, but you realize that everybody would say, where are the women? It's just like those who hold the guns are the one to be invited. But what about those that are making peace? So I think that's why we started saying, let's create the roster, let's train, so nobody can say, where are the women? But we have seen a female ambassador today of Zambia. Our sister can tomorrow go and lead mediation. Why not? So that's why I think we create this network, which is called FemWise, which is now taking most of the women that have skills and competence, and they can lead mediation, but also themselves being part of mediation at the table. And I think that what we right now looking at is the deployment of those women mediators. They have the skill, they have the knowledge, and we need to make sure that we deploy them at the African Union level, wherever we have mediation happening. That's not the reality right now. So let me also, the discussion that we have been saying, one of the big gaps, and I like what you and women did, was the he for she. We found that unless we bring men in the conversation, we will not get where we want. We need, because they are the one that perpetrate the violence. Most of the time, there are few women, but the majority are men. So how do we make sure that they are there and they are part of the conversation? It's not conversation among ourselves as feminists, but conversation with the men, and make sure that we have actions, and in particular leaders of Africa. We just, last year after the COVID, where we say we realize the impact and the violence against women happening everywhere in the house, not and doubly in areas of conflict, but also not just Africa, but in many other places. So we convened the men's conference on positive masculinity, and 10 head of state show up. It was not Minister of Gender only, but it was a head of state that sat down around President Tshisekedi to discuss gender-based violence. We need all of you, all of us, to make sure that we maybe reach more in terms of action on the ground. Bringing them to talk is one, making a declaration is another, is how now they implement those political commitment that we had last year. We are looking at more engaging with them this year, as well as Senegal is also the head right now of the African Union. So let me maybe highlight one thing that we did from our perspective of accountability, because we say we can have the beautiful action plan with the right indicators, fine, but how do we measure progress? So, of course, we convene head of state, but also member state to sit down, but also within the African peace and security. And we got the Continental Results Framework, which is an accountability tool to enhance delivery of WPS by AUC, but also our member state. I think right now we are certainly in next year going to revisit those indicators within the CRF, because we have emerging issues, even though climate change was there, but we had COVID, natural disaster, and so on. So we are making sure that every 2-3 years we revisit the CRF. But what we have also achieved is that out of the 30 countries that have national action plan, 20 African countries have reported, which now we submit to the Assembly of Head of State, that now Africa have a report on WPS using those indicators. Let's hope that we will have more national action plan with the 54 countries, but let's hope again that all of them will report on how they implement the national action plan. So I think over the year, data collected through the CRF indicators show that there is progress across the pillars, those 4 pillars, but much more need to be done. For me, let me just highlight what we found in the report. In the political arena, for example, data tells us that women's representation in political space is growing. That's one part. But in parliament, for instance, women representation have risen from 9% in 2000 to 25,000. That's what we found, with most growth being observed in post-conflict Horn of Africa, where women representation has grown from 8% in 2000 to 33% in 2020. And I think that's why it's important that we look at women leadership, because that if we are waiting until we have a conflict to invite women at the table, it will take maybe more time. So we also put in place what we call the Africa Women Leaders Network. So we can see women at a political level, but also in all sectors of life. Either it is a diplomatic corps, but also in the economic spheres as well, women entrepreneurs. So we looking and more women head of state, we need more. And right now we have only Ethiopia and Tanzania. We have few women ministers of foreign affairs, which is very good, it's growing. Ministers of finance, growing as well, but we need more on those positions. But minister also for in defense force as well. So the other areas on that we in our report on women participation in peace process, we have made few gains. And let me just give a few examples that women have accessing peace table. In 2018, South Sudan peace process, 20% of agreement signatory were women. I am not going back to the Liberia, to the Burundi, to the DRC, but the recent one in 2018. In Central Africa Republic also, women were formally involved in 2019 peace agreement. But it's a few compared to mediation that are ongoing in our continent where women are absent. So the other areas that we also found, gender reform are not taking place in our military. Many countries have reported on that. It's not just, the secret as it used to be, the military that nobody knows what's happening, but the police, the justice institution that are now involving greater women inclusion in that male-dominated sector. For example, in Kenya, for the first time in the history of Kenya military, a female officer was appointed to the influential role of the military spokesperson in 2021. So I think in Sierra Leone also, we noted the female representation in the military has grown to 10.5%. So now, let me say, Excellency, that despite this progress that I have just mentioned, the results at all levels, have not produced change in the life of women and girls in Africa. So moving forward, so maybe I just highlight 1 or 2 points. One big point is the formal peace table. We need to, right now, Mali, Central African Republic, and other places, women are absent, especially in the Mali and in places where we just had the coup d'etat. We need to make sure that women are also in the reform of their constitution, but also in the governance mechanism in the transition, as well in the electoral bodies that are coming in those countries. The other one is really violence against women. I think the justice, medical and psychological and reparation service, we need more funding, but also safe space for women and women in rural areas. I would also say maybe to our accountability in our process, which is we collecting the data. I think yet the system for data generation and management are hugely inadequate. We can see, we are I'm sending some experts to member states to train them, to accompany them on the collection of those data. So I think the Nordic Africa Institute can partner with the African Union Commission to generate knowledge data on women, peace and security in our continent, but also in the overall development, gender and development in Africa. So as I conclude, I think I just talk about a little bit of our upcoming decade. I think COVID have shown us, the economic impact on women. And that's why the head of state have decided that the 10 years to come will be the 10 year for women economic empowerment and financial inclusion. So it's a time that we look at the resources in Africa, which sometimes are the causes of, part of the causes of our conflict, to benefit to our people. So we know that, the climate change is going to impact more. We know that the Ukraine war will also have impact on food crisis, fuel crisis. I came this morning from Senegal, but I saw that tendency that is there. The food is high and high. They don't find any gas anymore anywhere. So, and I was attending the Ministers of Finance meeting yesterday, but all of them are saying that the recovery that we need in Africa, I'm not just talking about the conflict, but the economic recovery we all need. We saw what happened with the vaccine, Africa not benefiting. Of course, we were resilient, but how do we work with the North on rebuild multilateralism, but also make sure that we benefit together on the wealth of the world? That solidarity needs to be. I think women are doing the best, but we all need the North and the South. And that's why I applaud the efforts of the Nordic countries that have been at the front to make sure that we work together for the benefit of all, not just the benefit of Africa, because what impact in the North will impact on us. What impact on Africa will impact on the North. So let's be one. Let's make sure that women of the North and women in Africa work together hand in hand on many issues. And I salute again the work that you are doing at the Nordic Africa Institute with our ambassador. And I call on our African ambassador present to continue the good work of advocating for women, peace and security, but the gender agenda in Africa, but also in other parts of the world. So thank you again for inviting me. And I hope that I have not been too long in the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madam Vio. I think that you have given us a lot to consider and to keep in mind. And I'm very pleased to turn now so that we have an opportunity, hopefully, to hear some more reflections from you in a little bit of a discussion. But even if we don't get to that point, I think that you've given us such an enormous amount to think about in terms of both the accomplishments that the African continent has actually got behind itself in terms of WPS and the contributions, as well as the challenges ahead, not least that there should be more solidarity between the global North and the global South. I wanted to now turn to our roundtable participants. We have quite an interesting, vibrant group of researchers and a practitioner who have been working at the intersection of women, peace, and security. And they will complement Madame Diop's very important remarks. Our speakers are an anthropologist, a sociologist, and as I said, a much experienced practitioner. They are from Southern, East, and West Africa and Denmark. The first speaker will be Dr. Yaliwe Clark, who is interim director of the African Gender Institute and a lecturer in gender studies at the School of African and Gender Studies at the University of Cape Town. She has 2 decades plus worth of experience. She's also from Zambia, by the way, with a wide range of women's rights activists and peace builders. Our second speaker is my good colleague, Dr. Diana Madsen, who's a senior researcher at the Nordic Africa Institute, and she is a gender specialist with expertise on transformative approaches for gendered political empowerment and peace and security. Our third speaker is also another colleague and is Dr. Viola Naila Nyakato, who is also a senior lecturer at Mbara University of Science and Technology in Uganda, and a NI Africa scholar. And she's a sociologist with experience and a public health background, actually, which is quite interesting in terms of understanding the gender barriers to equity, particularly in education and land rights. And our final roundtable participant is Ms. Harriet Bright Williams, who is the coordinator of the Compact on Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action of UN Women, and who will bring us full circle, particularly since she has also been deputy and advocacy director of Femme Afrique Solidarité, and is right now in Geneva, near you, I think, Madame Diop, just before the Women, Peace and Security Focal Points Network meeting and preparing for that. So those are our four illustrious roundtable participants, and I will no longer jump in, but hand over to Dr. Clark, who will pass on to the other speakers. Thank you. Welcome, Yaliwe.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak on this panel. And I must say, I'm especially thankful to be on this panel with my fellow Zambian colleague, Ambassador Salu Katula, and the recognition that Zambia has been integral actually in pushing for the passing of WPS. I see that we are many speaking on the platform. So as Madame Diop was speaking, I was quickly scrolling down to some points that I thought could push us into some further thinking. Madame Diop covered so many integral points. I will not speak about the shift in representativity. I think she did an excellent point of that, and also that there are many more countries, up to 30, who are put in place national action plans, and therefore the data collection and the deepened critical understanding of what we mean by, integrating, and really further than integrating, rethinking how it is peace building, peace processes can occur that take the politics of gender and particularly femininity seriously. And I think that's where my entry point is going to be, a little bit on the conceptual, that what I have come to understand, and I've been thinking a lot about, is really the complexities of what it means to really center women's agency in peace processes, that there's so much variety and complexity in how femininities interact in context of extreme militarism and militarization, in the context of armed conflict, but even in context where there isn't public armed conflict, that the different positionalities that women hold and the changes that they're part of creating are very complex. And we're only beginning to understand what that really means. When we look at taking gender seriously from the perspective of international instruments like WPS 1325, what we tend to do is to think about peace building predominantly from the perspective of states and governments. Of course, it is an instrument that states and governments, assign to. One assumption that we take on is that once the protocols are signed, then gender equality within peace building processes will automatically or quickly become a given. And Madame Diop has pointed to the need for implementation. We need to also see that there's an assumption, that states will then make the shift. It's then very difficult for us to take into account the various complexities of context of militarism and war. And many feminists have written about the importance of, not undermining that complexity. Now, what occurs in the connections we make between women, peace, and security, it's in the protocol, and it's also very discursively present, is that link between femininity, womanhood, caregiving, motherhood. It is a very powerful a thing to recognize. However, we also need to think about how motherhood and femininity and womanhood can be valued and understood from quite diverse angles, right? So you could have women operating from the perspective of patriarchal nationalism. Still, yes, there are women, they are vocal, they are integrated into the process of social, very huge, difficult militarized social change processes. However, they are embedded and perhaps pushing towards versions of patriarchy that reinscribe the political systems that are problematic. So how do we pay attention to that? You could have women arguing from the perspective of anti-militarism and feminism. And there's so many different possibilities. There was a study done, which I found quite interesting in reviewing, sort of the language that has occurred with the growing international commitment to 1325, WPS 1325. And a review of of UN documents 10 years after the passing of 1325 revealed that critiques of militarism, military budgets, and military priorities seem to be curtailed, at least in the discourse, curtailed and reformulated into positive calls for women's participation and greater perspective to peace and security. So we just need to watch, how the discourse, how the focus on peace building and the centrality of femininity and gender equality can sometimes underrail or undercut how that needs to happen, as well as a critique of the increased military budgets in the world and how international militarism is still thriving, and it probably wouldn't necessarily change even if women were included in the process and peace processes were centered vis-a-vis, as opposed to a critique on military budgets and military priorities. And similarly, when you're thinking of, I think Madame Diop talked about peacekeeping structures, security sector reform processes, needing to understand how militaries and militarization in and of itself is too heavily present in how we think about peace, right? And peace building processes, that we need to think about humanitarian processes and the ways in which the continued focus on militaries and militarization inadvertently recreates a certain kind of violent masculinities. So if we don't change the systems of peacekeeping that rely heavily on militaries and military systems and militarization, even when women are added to those peacekeeping structures, it will be versions of militarized masculinities that will be performed by these women who enter into the policing system. There'll still be women, but the way in which peace is hopefully created through peacekeeping will still be heavily militarized. So increasing humanitarian processes. And I really like the idea of the one-stop center for women, because it is at that kind of one-stop where we can understand the complexities of what's going on with women in these contexts. What are the divergent different ways in which they're implicated, affected, have ideas on how things can change. And what I learned from my own PhD research on women in North Uganda, and I'll be done soon, where I spent a lot of time with women who founded peace groups during the height of the war in North Uganda, is that they had very complex and nuanced processes that could be useful for national level demilitarization, of the context in North Uganda. So, they thought about demilitarization also as an economic process, also as a humanitarian process, also as a process that needed social harmony from the perspective of spirituality. So cleansing was also very important. If the soldiers were not cleansed, if the families were not cleansed, if the women themselves and the children born in war were not cleansed, then the social harmony within the community could not happen, and the likelihood of remilitarization could happen. I'm just going to end there. I'm sure there are many more points that will come from the other speakers. So over to you, Angela, to take us to the next speaker, because I just can't remember who was to follow me at this second now.
Thanks so much, Yaliwe. I think now we welcome Diana Höland-Madsen, and yes, there you are, Diana. Great.
Yes, thank you very much, Angela, and thank you for including me in this important debate on this very important day. I'd also really like to thank you, Madame Binta Diop, for this very exhaustive presentation of the accomplishment and challenges. I think she put the spotlight on very many important aspects. In relation to the questions given on what the accomplishments have been in relation to the Women, Peace and Security agenda, I first find the need to acknowledge African actors and agency, and also highlight the very prominent role that Namibia played in relation to the adoption of Resolution 1325, and also this establishment of an international peace center recently in 2020. So what has been achieved is, for example, that a women, peace and security architecture has been set up. As Madame Diop also pinpointed, national action plans have been developed. Côte d'Ivoire actually did the first map outside of Europe in 2008. And there are many African countries that have second and third generations of national action plans. There are female troops deployed in the security sector, although at a relatively low level. There are also a lot of female mediators trained. There's some sensitization on women, peace and security, and also a growing body of research on this area. So those are some of the achievements. So the second question kind of focus on how women, peace and security is actually translated into practice at the grassroots or local level. So I would like to start by stating that these processes of translation of global gender norms, like women, peace and security, involves not just a trickling down, but also trickling up. So I think that there's a need for a kind of globalizations of the local experiences, not just thinking from top down to the bottom. It's also important to acknowledge that these processes of translation often involves more friction than flows. For example, if we talk about the local, we have to also reflect on who are the local and what is actually the local. If we think about national women's organizations, from my experiences from Rwanda, they are, for example, framing their activities on, for example, violence against women within the Women, Peace and Security agenda in order to attract resources, but also embark on new initiatives. For example, an actual translation of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 into local languages like Kinyarwanda. They have also formed both national and regional networks and are doing some monitoring and designing specific reports on the status of the implementation of the national action plans in Rwanda. But if you move to very local women's groups, they're often not familiar with the agenda, even though the themes of the agenda are of relevance to them. I think it's quite clear that the further you move away from the center, the more difficult it becomes to trace the women, peace and security agenda. For example, at that level, you can think about different understandings of gender in terms of complementarity and difference in relation to sameness and equality. But you also realize that the level of implementation is kind of dependent on micro negotiations over gender and power and over time and resources within the household. There's some awareness of some of the formal possibilities available, for example, for reporting on violence, but there's also the awareness that it may have consequences in terms of pressures from the in-laws, or potentially that the husband, if he is reported, may choose to stay away from home, or find another woman and things like that. So it's a more complex matter at the local level. So in terms of the third part, who should be supported in order to make progress, I will point at the national women's organizations and local women's groups. I mean, they provide a very active women's constituency, and they are kind of doing the localization work of the agenda. However, I would also point at the national gender machineries that are often mandated to implement the national action plans. But I believe that it would be good to partner with more stronger ministries like defense or finance. And the last thing I would like to say, that it would be good with more opportunities like this for dialogue on women, peace and security between academia, civil society and policymakers in African and Nordic countries. Thank you very much. And over to you, Viola.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you, everyone. And I'm really pleased to be part of this audience, and it's a lot to learn. I thank you, Angela, for the introduction, and definitely Nordic Africa Institute for organizing this important dialogue at this time and milestone of the African Union. I want to present something that may sound different from what has already been presented. I'll focus on teenage pregnancy and its implications on girls' education in sub-Saharan Africa, but also make suggestions or assumptions for strategies for school re-entry after pregnancy. As we all know, teenage pregnancy is an automatic sentence to school dropout for girls, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa. Because 95% of adolescents who become pregnant who become pregnant while in school will not return. And we already heard in the demographics, and we know that sub-Saharan Africa has one of the youngest population, and children become highest number of children who become pregnant, and is second to South Asia. 1 in 4 girls will become pregnant during adolescence, and millions of them are married off before they are 18 years. We also know that teenage pregnancy has intergenerational effects on society. It denies girls education, and it's a path to vicious circle of poverty and a major cause of sexual and gender-based violence. When it comes to COVID-19, COVID-19 made the situation even worse. For example, in Uganda, a study was conducted by the Forum for African Women Education in the early phases of the pandemic. And it found that there was a 366% increase in pregnancy for the 10 to 14 years. And this is one of the figures that motivated me to refocus and to rethink about this subject. Among the older adolescents, we have 15 to 19 and 20 to 24. The percentages of increase in pregnancy were much lower at 25% and 21% respectively. We have to note that by the early 1990s, most countries in the region had legislations on school re-entry policies. However, like I've already said, that only 5% of girls who become pregnant while still going to school come to school. They have not translated into opening space for girls to come back to school after pregnancy. This is because most policies in themselves are discriminatory and stigmatizing. There are cases where they ask girls to declare who made them pregnant, and they are asked to stay away from school and come back. So a lot of discrimination and stigmatization for parenting adolescents who want to return to school. Denying girls the opportunity to go back to school is religiously and culturally justified. I will quote a recent expression by one of the religious leaders when Uganda passed its revised guidelines for prevention and management of teenage pregnancy in school going. I quote, "Pregnant and parenting girls should not come to our schools. Let them sort their issues at home. We cannot allow such immoral behavior." The Bishop James Williams Sevagala of Mukono Diocese, he was publicly quoted in media. Girls become pregnant and are blamed for being immoral, and childbirth presents social and economic childcare burdens to adolescents and their families. Denying girls opportunity to go back to school after pregnancy exposes the world's failed decades of gender equality agenda. We need evidence-based and contextualized, tailor-made learning environments for girls who become pregnant. There is increasing evidence on the role of alternative education environments, but we still lack evidence on how they can be implemented in the African context. Alternative education environments offer non-judgmental, appropriate learning spaces for pregnant and parenting adolescents. This is the research that I'm focusing on while at NAI for the next 1 year. And I am happy and look forward to sharing the evidence. Thank you so much. I hand over to Harriet for her insights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Viola. Excellencies, distinguished guests, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and many thanks to the Nordic Africa Institute for extending this invite and for the opportunity to speak on the Compact on Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action. Again, happy Africa Day, happy anniversary tonight, and always good to see my mentor, Madame Diop, who is always very inspiring. I would like to focus on how we can monitor and provide accountability for global commitments on peace and security as it relates to women and girls at local level. So more than 2 decades after the adoption of Security Council Resolution 1325, we've heard many people say today that Africa has 58% of member states that have now adopted a national action plan on women, peace and security. But we're also seeing this progress across the globe because in terms of adoption, we now have 100 NAPs that have been adopted. But I want to recall that the rallying cry that we all heard in 2020 on the 20th anniversary of Resolution 1325 was the need for more implementation of existing WPS commitments. In addition, there were, and also there remains a lot of questions about impact. How do we measure impact? And how do we translate the success of the WPS normative framework to success for the people who are directly affected by conflicts and crisis? And it was in this vein that UN Women and partners decided to develop the Compact on Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action, which was launched in 2020-21. So the idea was to review progress on how far the WPS agenda has come and to identify the existing challenges. So we looked at women's meaningful participation in peace processes. We looked at financing the WPS agenda, women's leadership and agency, women's economic security, and the protection and promotion of women's rights. And the aim was to approach this in a holistic way that looked at the peace, humanitarian, and development nexus. And I recall Yaliwe has also talked about emphasizing also on the humanitarian. And what the Compact tried to do was to identify specific actions, but also to take a multi-stakeholder approach to fulfilling the commitments that we have on WPS, which means creating a space where you have member states, you have regional organizations, you have women's networks, youth networks, UN entities, academia, and the private sector working together in partnership towards the same goal. So if you become a signatory to the Compact, you also commit to a voluntary accountability process to annually share progress on the actions that you have selected. And this really builds on the work already being done on national action plans by different countries, as well as, for example, the Continental Results Framework that Madame Diop highlighted, because the idea is not to create additional reporting processes, but can we have a global monitoring and reporting framework where we can bring together all of these existing mechanisms for reporting and have a very clear sense of where we are in terms of progress using this multi-stakeholder approach. I'm also happy to note that we have the AU Special Envoy's office as a signatory and a board member of the compact. And we also have a number of Nordic countries who are signatories to the compact and are also catalytic members of the compact. I want to say what we've heard from African women's organizations and networks who are compact signatories in terms of their top 3 priorities for women, peace, and security. I don't think this will come as a surprise because we've all been discussing it even today. One was women's meaningful participation in peace processes and the inclusion of gender-related provisions in peace processes. The second one was on women's economic security, access to resources, and other essential services. And the third was on women's leadership and agency in peace, security, and humanitarian sectors. I know we are running out of time, but I want to just touch on what we have learned so far in this process, which might be food for more thought. One was on less jargon and more action. And I say jargon in the sense that in looking at this multi-stakeholder approach, a priority has been how do we reach new audiences and how do we garner wider and more diverse support for women, peace, and security, including in local communities? And how do we simplify what the agenda brings to communities so that more people can relate to it? Because this is important for accountability. And I know this is quite hard because we all are so used to saying the right words in the right way. And we find out that even in discussing through this multi-stakeholder approach, there's not a lot of understanding on how to translate that normative framework into action. Again, bringing all partners to the table through this multi-stakeholder approach is crucial because having a space to collectively discuss solution is a very powerful thing. We've seen youth signatories to the compact, for example, who this is the first time for them directly engaging with member states and UN entities at the same time. Third is that the how matters. How do you implement the agenda matters? So when we discuss with compact signatories, we want signatories to ask themselves, what specific problem are we solving? And is this the right intervention? Are we being inclusive enough? Have we involved local communities in the design of our intervention? And are we being innovative and more efficient? And how can this intervention be sustained financially? And then fourth, and I think this ties in with Madame Diop's point on data monitoring. We've also found out that monitoring and accountability is not simple or straightforward because we have signatories who are asking for peace and security processes that are accessible and accountable to women and marginalized groups and organizations. And we find out that what we want to monitor and actually being able to do it are two different things. So again, just to recall and also to really support that we need simpler systems that will really give us the information that we need, that doesn't overburden the actors who are already working on these issues, and that we're able to really determine impact in terms of what we take forward as part of the WPS agenda. So for UN Women, the compact really means prioritizing the work that we have been doing, but also harnessing the regional specificities and context for more impact. And so this conversation, the partnership that we could potentially take forward with academic institutions, as of course with the African Union, to advance women, peace and security in Africa and everywhere. We're really happy to be part of this and also to continue to discuss further. Over to you, Angela.
Thank you very much, Harriet. And thank you to all the panelists for their really insightful comments, and also for bringing in a number of critical perspectives based on research and based on particularly on the local perspective. I have a lot of notes that I've taken, but I also am mindful that we don't have very much time left for discussion. So before I hand over to close, I just would like to offer the floor to Madame Binta Diop, if she would like to add any comments or reflections based on the roundtable participants. Not sure.
Thank you so much, Angela. Just to appreciate, the different angle, either it is on the issue of militarization, either it is also on the multi-stakeholders, platform, and so many, I think we are getting there. We know what is missing, all of us together, but we need to be that force together to transform. So I think that's what this platform is offering today, and more research need to be done. I think that is what Nordic Institute for Africa is doing, but also to go into action. So again, thank you, Angela. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very grateful. I have been listening and learning more and more as you have the practitioner, the researcher, and those who are the activists as well, and the politician, and the diplomats. So it was great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Madame Diop. I want to also offer the opportunity to Ambassador Kaltorp. Perhaps she would also have a few short remarks or reflections based on the really rich discussion that has just gone by.
No, thank you, Angela. And I would also like to thank all for an extremely interesting and enlightening discussion, and extremely rich discussion where I also have learned a lot. I also would like to thank Madame Diop in particular. It was extremely interesting to listen to you, and of course your long and rich experience with the WPS agenda is of course something that I hope that we from a Swedish perspective can tap into. And also, as you have said, here at the Nordic Africa Institute, you have managed together, the researchers, the experts, the diplomats, and to see how we can bring this further. This collaboration is something that I would be very interested to pursue with you and with others. So also from me, thank you a lot, and I look forward to speak to you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Kaltorp. I'm going to hand over actually to Ambassador Salukutula to give the closing remarks. Many of you have already pointed out some of the really interesting back and forth between the academics and the presentation, the speech given by Madame Diop, and how there were various aspects that were noted that I thought were quite remarkable and striking as well, around militarization, around this issue of the impact of the COVID pandemic exacerbating inequalities, around challenges of implementation, and this issue of how do we really actually trickle up. I think that Dr. Madsen made that point quite well about trickling up the local perspective. And finally, thank you so much to Harriet and to UN Women for really pointing out the need to simplify things a bit more if we really want to see implementation happen. So it's been a really rich and interesting day to reflect on WPS and on Africa Day. I'm really happy because in addition, Africa Day is often the time that we think about the founding fathers. And this has been a moment and a time to think about also the younger sisters that are coming up, the founding mothers, and the generations to come, men, women, boys, and girls. So with those short notes, let me hand over, please, to Ambassador Role Falukutula to close our proceedings. Apologies, you're muted, Ambassador.
I'm sorry for that. I was saying thank you, Angela, for this wonderful day. I think all of us agree that it is a special day that we have been able to meet and share very, very, very important information. I want also to extend my sincere gratitude to our guest speaker, that is Madame Binet Diop. I think she's shared a lot of valuable information to all of us, which I think remains food for work. A lot of things has been expressed in terms of what Africa has been able to do and the challenges that Africa is still facing. But I want to take one special phrase that she made, that I think all of us should be agents of change in protecting women, in working, ensuring that women participate in decision-making and even issues that relate to peace and security. Honorable Chairperson, we want to assure you that yes, we'll be agents of change. I think from this meeting, we are going to contribute to this improvement in various ways. I also want to thank Ambassador Sophia for coming through, and also through you, Ambassador Sophia, to thank the Swedish government for the support that they've continued to give African countries in terms of dealing with the gender equality issues, governance issues, the rule of the law. I want to say we remain grateful, and we look forward to continued support from the Swedish government. Director Teresa and your special team, that is Angela and Camilla, we are very, very grateful for the immense support that you have given for this webinar to be successful. I also want to say that the African women ambassadors that are based in Stockholm, I think should have a special privilege, because we are here working closely with you. And also we know that we also belong to Africa, where again, we have the chairperson, a special envoy, who is a woman. We need now to build on what we have done today in terms of networking, so that perhaps we continue with this conversation and see that it yields something. I think I've heard that it should not be business as usual, but there should be action, there must be impact. I also want to agree with Diana, who talked of a lot of action at local level. I think it's very, very important. You and I think we might be able to know our way out, but a woman in a rural area, I think need a lot of support from all of us that are here, because they are not privileged, they don't have the information that we have. So through the NGOs and different institutions, I think a lot needs to be done so that awareness is brought among the local women in various rural areas of Africa. I also want to thank all the speakers, the participants that have participated in this webinar, and not to forget my fellow African ambassadors that continued to work with the Nordic Institute of Africa to ensure that we are gathered here today and be able to discuss these issues. Again, thank you everyone for making this webinar a great success. Thank you.